Alright, so I'm getting ready to do some European skull mounts on some deer. And of course, first step is we need to skin the head and get as much meat off the skull as possible. Alright, so I've got the skin off the deer head now, and I've trimmed off as much of the flesh as I could. On this one, I left the lower jaw, but at this point you can take the jaw off if you want. I'm doing this for a friend of mine, and I don't know if he wants the lower jaw, so I'm going to leave them on there, and we'll just boil this whole thing. So that's the next step, take it to the boiling pot. Alright, so what I've got here for my heat source is I'm using a propane burner and a propane tank, of course, and this does a real good job. It's got a real strong frame made of steel to put my pot on. There's my boiling pot, and I'm getting ready to put it on there and heat the water up. So if you look right here now, you can see that's really loosened up. Alright, so these have been boiling now for about 2.5 hours total time, and they should be pretty close to being clean. I've had them out a couple times and scraped them. Just a little bit still left on there. But you can look at it and see how clean it's got. There's a few little places still have some meat. Alright, so it looks like I got that pretty clean. Maybe a little speck of flesh here and there. Now I'll show you a couple things. You want to make sure that you clean real good around the antler bases. Sometimes there'll be like a little tiny piece of skin right there. Another thing is, you want to really be careful with the nose. This bone right here is thin. As a matter of fact, sometimes it'll get too hot and these pieces will come off. And I'll show you that here in just a minute. Alright, so the boiling is done. They're all cleaned up. Now I'm going to do is, I've got some soapy water, and I'm going to scrub them. I just use dish soap and clean them up. Okay, so we finished boiling these skulls, but I just want to show you this one little thing that sometimes happens. During the boiling process, this nose bone, you can see right there, sometimes will come loose. And on this one it didn't, it stayed intact. But on the other skull, the little nose bone came off, which is not a big deal at all. And I'll show you what I do to fix those. I just super glue them back on. Alright, so all I'm going to do here is put a little super glue right there. Doesn't take much. Then I'll just put that right back on there where it belongs. Alright, there it is. You can see that right there. And I'll just let that dry a little bit, then I'll do the other side. So I'll put a little glue on this one. Then we'll let that dry. Alright, so this is the skull that we repaired the nose pieces on. And get up here closer, you can see it. You can see it's good as new. It's glued back. We're at a point now we're ready to start our bleaching process. But before I do that, I want to cover up the antlers, especially down here around the bases, because we don't want the bleach solution to get up on there and discolor the antlers. The easy way to do that is with a piece of foil. So what I do is I just wrap this foil right around the antler right there. And I use foil because it's real easy to form around the antler. Okay, so here's the bleaching product we're going to use. It's actually a salon product that's used to bleach hair, and it consists of two parts. You have the liquid, which is the peroxide, and you have this powder that's called Quick Blue. And we're going to mix it up into a paste, and we're going to put it on the deer skull. You can get these bleaching products at a salon store, or you can order them online, which is what I do. I get these on Amazon, but I'm sure there's plenty of other places that sell it. Alright, so you don't have to measure anything. I'm just going to put some of the powder in my little container here. Then we're going to add some of our peroxide. And I'm using a small paintbrush. So if it's too liquidy, I'll just add some more powder. That looks about right there. See, I want a paste so it'll stick to the bone. So what I'm going to start doing now is spreading this all over the skull. And I want to make sure that I get it down in all the little nooks and crannies. We want to coat it really well. And I guess I should have said it before, but it's common sense. You want to make sure that you cover your work area with some plastic or paper, because this stuff is very strong and it will discolor anything that it gets on. So you can see what that looks like as it's going on there. You just basically paint it on, smear it on thick. Alright, so you can see now I've got that all covered good. And that's basically what it should look like when you put the bleaching product on there. You want it nice and thick, especially right here on the top of the head, because that's the part that you'll see when it's displayed. So now what we'll do is we'll set this over here to dry and work on another one. Alright, so yesterday afternoon we applied the bleaching solution to the skulls, and I let it dry overnight, and so now it's time to clean that off and the bleaching process will be done. I'll let you see what it looks like up close. See, it's kind of dries, kind of powdery. And what I found is the easiest way to remove this is with a water hose. So let's clean them up. Alright, so we're done with our mount, and now all we got to do is figure out how we want to hang it or display it. And what I do with most of them, it's really simple, is you can just put a piece of wire right through the skull there on the back. There's holes in the skull right there, and I'll make a loop out of wire, and then you can just hang that on a nail and display it right on the wall. Of course, there's also a variety of other hangers. There's several different types of plaques. I'll show you a couple that I have. So I made these plaques where I could put the mount on a table, and I just took a board and put a bracket right there, and a couple screws in the bottom of the skull, and that works good for sitting it on a table. I made several of those. Of course, you can also do it flat on a plaque like this, but here's the ones I just have hung on the wall with the wire on the back. Alright, so one other thing I'll show you real quick is this technique of bleaching and boiling can work on any type of skull, and I frequently do it on bear skulls as well, and it's the same process. So here's a bear skull that I did. And I will say one thing with the bears, you have to be careful when you're boiling it. The teeth will fall out. So when you get done and you pour your water out, you want to be real careful and pick your teeth up, because you can put them back in and just put a little drop of super glue in there to hold them in, because they do loosen up. So that's it for this video on European skull mount. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something from it. And if anybody has any questions, just leave me a comment. Thanks for watching.